I'm Dr. Scott Lyons, and you're watching or listening to The Gently Used Human. Have you ever wondered why conversations about sex and pleasure often feel like navigating a minefield of awkwardness and taboo? Y'all, why is it that in a world brimming with information, the dialogue around our sexual well-being remains so stifled? And how can we break through the barriers of silence to cultivate relationships that thrive on open communication and profound pleasure? I'm joined today by Emily Morse, best-selling author of Hot Sex, Over 200 Things You Can Try Tonight, and Smart Sex, and host of the #1 sexuality podcast on iTunes, Sex with Emily. Emily has dedicated her career to demystifying the world of sex and pleasure, advocating for open, honest communication as the cornerstone for a vibrant sexual relationship. Together, Emily and I will explore the reason behind our collective hesitation to talk about sex, the benefits of expanding our understanding of what sex can be, and the practical steps we can take to enhance intimacy and pleasure in our lives. Yes! We'll tackle how to approach pleasure thieves like stress and trauma and shame, and discuss the power of mindfulness and creating a safe space for those important conversations. Emily and I had so much fun as we played games to increase our resilience to connect and communicate about sex. And oh my gosh, did I blush. She is heaven on earth, y'all. She is one of my favorite people in this entire world. And whether you are curious about navigating your desires, exploring fantasies, or simply looking to enrich the sexual aspects of your relationship, you are in the right place. This episode has it all, so let's get it on. Dr. Emily Morse, welcome to The Gently Used Human, my love.
I'm so excited to be here, Dr. Scott Lyons.
I'm so excited too, and I'm going to start with a poem. This is a poem written by a dear friend of mine that I thought would be a beautiful entry into the theme at hand today. And it begins, Spinderella cut it up one time. Ooh, 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 ooh. Come on. Let us talk about sex, baby. Let us talk about you and me. Let us talk about all the good things and the bad things that make me be. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex now. To the people at home and in the crowd, don't be coy, avoid, or make void the topic. Many will know anything goes. Let's tell it how it is, how it could be, and how it was. And then, of course, how it should be. Emily Morse, let's talk about sex. That is written by my dear friend Salt and Peppa.
I love it. People usually a lot of times play that song, but I love hearing the words.
I think it's
Why don't we talk about sex?
Why
that was
don't
in the
we talk
90s,
about
dude,
sex?
and we're still here trying to get people to talk about it.
I know. Emily, you, I feel like, are one of the main people who have brought the renaissance of pleasure into our lifetime. And I'm so excited to talk to you about sex.
Too.
Why don't we talk about sex?
Oh, God. I mean, how much time do we have? I mean, there's
90 minutes.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
I mean, we don't talk about sex because we don't have great models of people talking about sex. Many times our parents didn't talk to us about sex.
Yeah.
Our neighbors didn't talk to us. Our friends didn't. And when we did hear about sex, it was, if we grew up in an environment where it was shunned or it was criticized or we were told not to have sex, it was negative messaging or negative conditioning around sex. And then maybe we saw porn and that was confusing. And we thought, well, is that sex? So we really just don't have a lot of great places to go where we feel safe and shame-free.
Yeah. Now, you just asked the question, is that sex? But I think we can ask it more universally. Emily, what is sex?
It's a great question. It's really easy to start with that everyone gets to decide what sex means to them. Yeah. So I can tell you that if we ask most people on the street, we went up in the street and asked people, what is sex? They would say penetration. Yeah. Man, woman, penis goes in vagina, they had sex. Or they didn't have sex. Yeah. But I'm going to argue that we all get to decide what it looks like. Yeah. And for some people, sex could be, making out. Yeah. It could be mutual masturbation. It could be oral sex. Yeah. It could be, no penetration and, upside down wheelbarrow without, I don't even think about my sex position. It doesn't have to be anything. I mean, it could just be cuddling. We had a great connection, dirty talk.
Yeah.
So I think that when we just say sex, we think penetration.
Yeah.
But I would love to decenter sex on that because for the majority of people with vulvas, not people think I'm saying vulvas often, but I'm saying vulvas, which is the exterior part of the vagina, which is analogous to the penis.
Yeah.
We just call it the vagina sometimes, but for women, the exterior part of the vagina is where the magic happens.
Yep.
So penetration doesn't feel good for us as much. Only 20% of women have orgasms from a penis, anything to do with a penis.
Really?
And so to say that that's what sex is leaving a lot of women just not satisfied. That's number one. And number two, the reason why I think sex became defined that way is because of procreation and because of religion. And we were told like, well, if you're going to have sex, it has to be to make a baby. Yeah. It can't be for anything else. It can't be for pleasure. God, God forbid it's pleasurable. Yeah. And so that's the messaging people have gotten to for thousands of years.
I love how inclusive you are and the fact that you're breaking down these barriers around these misconceptions of maybe what sex is and the permissions to still define it for ourselves. I think one of the earliest definitions I had, not earliest, but like in my 20s when I was like, sex was an opportunity to go from more boundaried individualism to kind of a meshment for some time. And then the permission to go back to individualism. Now it's an evolving definition for me, but that's what it was. Yeah, that's such
what an evolved definition of sex. Because when you're saying that, I'm thinking like it is about someone that you feel safe with, connected, and perhaps you both had a pleasurable experience together in a way that involved your body parts. Yeah, but that's also saying. So what that says is that you come together and you bound. Is that what it was? You come together, you boundaries, and you can leave again. So you're not leaving yourself with this person, but you leave whole.
Yeah, there's some type of like unison or union that happens in sex to me, like whether it's energetic or just connecting or physical. But that it moves from like individualism into union and back into individuation with the memory of the sort of unison. But I mean, but sex can also just be with yourself.
It could be an orgy too, though.
It could be an orgy. It could be a lot of unison.
a lot of unison and a lot of...
Yeah. So that's why, I mean, it's like I said, involving definition.
I think it's interesting. I would love people just to think about that for a minute. Like, what does it actually mean to you? And when is it the most pleasurable? Like, what kind of sex do you like? And, what does it actually mean? So I think it's a great... it's a great topic to talk about because I don't think that many of us has ever really sat and thought about like, not only do we not know what we like and what feels good, we probably never really thought about like what actually is sex and what makes it good, what makes it satisfying.
Yeah. Now, speaking of funky role models, I'm curious because you were an amazing role model. Like, what was your childhood like in terms of role models and how did that go? If you're open to talking about it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, role models sexually or just in general?
Like how did you hear about sex? Where did you first hear about it?
I remember having sex ed when I was in 7th grade. I mean, maybe I'd heard about it beforehand. It was like one day or day of class and it was like boys and girls were in the room together. And I remember like, I kind of remember looking up the projector and there was like pictures of like ovulation and the period involved menstruation. And then I remember one boy in the class raised a hand and said, like, Miss Jones, can you have sex underwater? And like, that's all, she's like, yeah, you could. And like, literally that's all I remember from the class. That was my sex ed. It was a day, and it was a lot of giggling and a lot of embarrassment. And then I remember, having sex when I was 17 with my boyfriend I'd been with for a year. It felt very important to wait. But I remember it being like underwhelming and not that interesting. I felt like it was more about, again, how I came to feel about sex after that it was good, not great. Yeah. And I didn't really, I definitely didn't have an orgasm, but I just remember thinking like, okay, check, I did that. Yeah. And then I remember my mom would say to me, if you ever have questions about sex, please ask. So that was more than a lot of parents did. I know a lot of parents didn't do anything. Yeah. And so I think she probably said that to me once or twice. And what I found is parents often do that now too. I found, but like, I didn't know the questions to ask because you don't know how textured sex is and how many layers there are. So that was my history with sex. Yeah. Pretty much what I knew.
I love that you're referring to it as like a textured experience. When I was reading your book, there was a moment where I felt so sad. And it was... And it was like, we don't even necessarily know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. So if we're like coming into the world or coming into our sex experiences, and we don't even know how good or textured or embodied or fulfilling it could be, then we're just left in this like muck.
Yeah.
But we might assume like that's all it is.
That's exactly it. That's what I thought. I thought that sex was just disappointing because then I went on to have sex, and I do Open Smart Sex, my book talking about my experience of just being underwhelmed, being in relationships all through my 20s I'd be with someone for, a few months. It would be great at the beginning. The sex would feel so connected and magical and new. And then after a while that would taper off. And then I was bored and realizing like they're always having a good time. They're always finishing. I am not having orgasms. And then I went through a series of blaming my partners and then thinking something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then I thought, this is enough already. Like, this just doesn't seem, sex is supposed to be this incredible, glorified thing that everyone talks about. Why is it not for me? Am I broken? What's wrong? So that's where I started my journey, from a place of like, I know something's wrong and I like to fix it. To get the answers.
I mean, it's interesting that that's your journey, and often like going back to sex education, I mean, it's more focused on what not to get, or how not to get pregnant, or all of these things, and like the potential diseases. It's all
fear-based.
It's all fear-based.
All of sex education is about fear, and like, don't get pregnant, don't get an STI.
Yeah.
Have a nice life. And then you're like, what? It sounds terrifying. Why would I ever want to have sex? And there's no talk about pleasure.
No.
There's no talk about like consent or boundaries or, any of that stuff is completely left out.
Any of that, which is why I'm saying you are one of the major players in the pleasure, bringing back pleasure, the renaissance of pleasure. And I just really appreciate it. So you went from sex is okay, and then it started your journey of how you became, I don't know, an incredible author, the #1 podcast of Sex with Emily. Like this, the lack started your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then what happened?
Then what happened?
Then what happened?
Well, which part? So then I just started, I started a podcast, I'm heading into my 19th year of my podcast right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I just started really interviewing people about their sex lives and their relationships and dating and love. And then I realized after that first day of recording, I think I did like 6 episodes in a day.
Oh my God.
And I remember, just because everyone was there, we were talking, and it was just a whole thing. And I remember thinking like, okay, well, this is a movement. This is, people are open and they're talking about it, and we're all learning and realizing that we were having a lot of the same challenges. And it was everybody. It was men, women, single, straight, everything. And people were just married, divorced, like all ages, all people. And everyone was like, I don't have any information about it. I was like, well, then that was such a spark there. And I just knew that was going to be my journey. And then I started reading, exploring. I read every book on sex. And then I went back to grad school and got my doctorate in human sexuality.
Yeah.
And that's been my journey. And so since then, it's been the podcast and writing books and speaking and just helping people. My mission is to get people to prioritize their pleasure and liberate the conversation around sex. That's it. Like, how do we look at pleasure as a practice, and that pleasure is actually productive, and it's a requirement for, I think living a happy, healthy life, and liberating the conversation is just what we're doing right now.
I love that phrase, Emily, pleasure is a practice, as opposed to like, we should just automatically have it or just default into pleasure or even know what it is. So what is the process and the practices of pleasure activating, or
pleasure activate? I mean, so I write in Smart Sex. I have something called the pleasure percentage, because that was the moment where I realized that I had a life that was just like, there was like a pleasure drought. Because they had me, I was on this retreat, as you can imagine, someone who does retreats and teaches, and I was not teaching this retreat, I was on it. And they were like, okay, I want you, this is the best way I could explain, and people could do this as well. They said, write down everything you do in a week that gives you joy. That's like, makes you happy, makes you feel good. Like, what do you love doing? Yeah. And then you write all those things down, like, or not even a week, but what do you love doing? Yeah. And then they had you look at your week and say, okay, it was like a formula that I put in the book, like math. And it's like, what percentage of time do you do these things? And then I realized I did the math, and I realized that like only like 3% of my life was doing things that were actually pleasurable. And I'm not even talking about sex. I'm talking about plans with friends, hiking, cooking. That's not actually one of mine, but, just like being in nature or just whatever the things are in my life that I actually gave me joy and gave me pleasure, I wasn't doing. So I was like, well, that is just no way to go through life. And then I decided to be more conscious about, looking at my schedule. And it's not just about work, but it's like, where can I infuse more joy in our life? Because pleasure begets pleasure. And the more we get comfortable feeling pleasure in our body, well, then the more natural it'll be to expect it and to prioritize it in our lives.
I love that you're talking about pleasure tolerance in this moment of like, the more we can become accustomed and connected with our own sense of pleasure, the more our capacity grows for it.
Yes, it's true, right? Because then you're like, oh, I want more of that. That felt good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because our society is so about like pleasure. We don't deserve pleasure, or only once I get everything off, check everything off my to-do list, or it feels selfish, or, but I would argue that pleasure actually is productive. Yeah. And the more we bring that into our lives, the more we'll be able to get done, and the more we'll be able to show up and be present and aware and, a good friend, a good lover, all the things.
So if someone might not have as much pleasure yet in their sex life, they could focus on other aspects of their life that they could receive and connect and embody the pleasure and then bring it in? Is that one of like the practices? Like if someone isn't able to really connect to pleasure in the bedroom or sexually, then could they focus on other aspects of their life where there could be pleasure as to like build the pleasure tolerance?
Yeah, they could. That's actually a great way to start, because just thinking about how else can I feel good in my life? Because if I'm coming into the bedroom and I'm not feeling it, where am I? Do I think I don't deserve it? Is it hard for me to receive? Is it hard for me to ask for what I want? And so, but the thing about not having any pleasure in the bedroom, which is actually really common, and I mean from like women who experience pain, like, did you know that 80% of women experience pain during sex at some point in their life? Yeah. And some of those women, it's all the time. Yeah. And so they have been numbing, or they can't feel things. And it could be, it could be a lot of things. It could be trauma. It could be physiological. They actually might have an overgrowth of nerve endings. They might have something, there's a lot of things that, that could be going on, why people are not having it, but then they just kind of accept it. So there's ways to work through every challenge that people have. But a lot of times we're having pleasure because we don't actually know what we like. We don't ask for the kind of touch we want. We're really in our heads. Whenever we're in our heads too much, thinking too much about what's right and what should I be doing, it is really hard to experience pleasure at the same time that we're experiencing anxiety. They can't actually coexist. And so most of those thoughts in our heads are keeping us from our bodies. Yeah.
I used to use the analogy of like, if you're not in the lake, like if you're not swimming in the lake, you can't actually feel the quality of water. And the same thing is true of like, if we're above the lake, or if we're in our head intellectualizing it, how the hell would we feel pleasure?
Really? We're like professionals at sort of overriding our bodies. Yeah, right?
We are. Mm-hmm. And how could we then think that when cross over into sex?
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, if you really are going through life not embodied, but then you get into the bedroom and you're like, why isn't it great? Why? I thought sex was magic. We're together. Yeah. It's supposed to feel great. But it's actually, that is a practice. You don't just come into the bedroom and, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're like a stressed out, anxious person in your life, you might get in the bedroom and bring that into the bedroom, unfortunately. Yeah. So we have to like unlearn, relearn.
Yeah. I really appreciate that it's like, this idea that it's not some magic switch of like, we're in the bedroom and all of a sudden all of these things that aren't in the rest of our life aren't going to be in the bedroom. Like we need to practice mindfulness, presence, embodiment everywhere, which includes the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And how might we start to do that? And like, I hear how we might do it in maybe our daily life, but how do we start to utilize that in sexual pleasure life?
Well, I want to normalize the fact that first that, most of us are pretty disassociated in the bedroom. Yeah. We are thinking about pleasing our partner or pleasing ourselves. Yeah. So it does start to have we're worried about pleasing our partner and less about ourselves. Yeah. Or maybe we are just about, let me get my orgasm and get out. Yeah. None of those are the ways to experience the most pleasure. And so first thing is awareness. So I've noticed that I disassociate. I don't remember what happened, or I'm just sort of faking it till it's over. And so, first thing is awareness. And then on your own, practicing your own, first, it's always great to have like a breathwork practice or a mindfulness practice. But if you're with a partner, it's okay to say, you know what? Sometimes, like, here's examples of where you might get off. A lot of times sex happens and we are we're just going along with it. We keep moving through sex. And then sometimes I know this happened to me. I'm like, how did we get here? Like, how am I already naked?
Yeah.
How is there something inside me? So giving people permission to say, can we just like slow down for a minute? Why don't we just like, I feel like we've gotten really fast, but can we just go back to I'd love to look into your eyes. Can we hold hands for a second?
Yeah.
Could we go back to the making out? So to me, just that presence of saying that and saying, I need to slow way down. So I think slowness during sex and giving yourself permission that it's not a script you're following, that we think of sex as so linear. So to be able to like slow it down, breathe, make eye contact. Like some of the great ways to be more connected during sex is, and these are sort of tantric practices, but when I say tantra, people are like, oh God, I got to go take another course or I got to it takes, 2 hours. But no, tantra is basically eye gazing and breathing together. And that is a game changer for sex. It can help you get into that mindset of presence and embodiment and connection with your partner. So just one of the things would be like slowing down. Can we take a few deep breaths? Start with slow touching too. I mean, if we already talk about what sex feels like when it's not pleasurable, it goes right to our genitals, but we need some time to warm up. So if you think of sex as something that we just want to like slow everything down, slow down your making out, slow down touching each other, give each other, I love telling couples a great way to do it is to slow down and maybe you take 10 minutes and massage your partner and then they take 10 minutes and massage you because there's so much power in touch and massage and relaxing our nervous system and releasing tension and stress. And it's almost like a warm up before a workout. Right? So
I love that. I mean, touch really is our first language. Like we come into this world, we don't speak, German or English or any of that. We speak and communicate through touch. We learn even our sense of presence of another person through touch. And so like in this way that you're talking about, like pleasure and sex is a returning to our primal language, our primal communication.
Slow it down.
Slow it down.
Touch each other.
Get in the primal.
I mean, doesn't that happen? I mean, I feel like when someone, when I get them, the reason why I love massage, whether it's my partner or somebody else, I mean, just like a professional or just some other random I met in the street, is that, I mean, it just, it resets everything. It releases, I can start over. I feel fresh. I feel connected. And so everyone gets to find what those practices are for them. Sauna, bath. What allows you to slow and feel.
And there's something when we slow down, we can touch and be touched simultaneously. I mean, like when we think of like giving a massage, I feel like a lot of people think it's one directional as opposed to this like bi-directionalness where it's like, my hand is on my leg, but my leg is touching my hand. And the same way I'm like touching a partner, they're touching me regardless of the act.
Yeah, it's an active practice.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embodied Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embodied Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embodied Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embodied Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embodied Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout. So we have awareness, we have embodiment. Is there more?
Well, what else could we do? You're asking about what was it? More pleasure, more connection?
Yeah, how do we keep building our sense of connection and pleasure?
Really through, communication too.
Yeah.
Communication. Probably the thing I've repeated the most is communication is a lubrication. And the more comfortable we feel talking about sex, the more present we'll feel, the more pleasure we're going to have. And so again, yes, body language is really important. But if we don't have the words to talk about sex, we don't really even know how to do it, which I would tell you is probably most of the people on the planet aren't really comfortable and don't have the tools to talk about sex in a productive way with a partner. So yeah, like just getting comfortable talking about your pleasure, your desires, what you want, admitting that it's awkward if it's the first time you've done it. And I hope after many people listen today, they will do it tonight. They're inspired. And so I just want to recognize that it could be awkward. Your partner might say, what do you mean? Why are we talking about sex all of a sudden? Because Scott, would you believe that most people think that you shouldn't have to talk about sex to make it great? They think that it should just be always feel great like it was at the beginning. That's the common belief around it. So the skill set of learning to talk about sex without shame, without judgment, and just truly listening is an important practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you're giving such a good example of like we wouldn't not talk about any other tool or skill set we're developing. Like if you're going to be an engineer, you better learn and listen and be able to talk about engineering. And I don't think we don't think about like that's a skill set, that's a practice, just like pleasure is a practice that needs to be communicated about.
And the thing is too, is that if you think about anything in life that you value and that you want to be good at and you want to enhance your skill set, you got to work at it. You want to be really good at your job. You want to get a promotion. You want to be a great runner. You got to run a lot. You got to train. But sex is like this outlier that because we don't understand it, because of all the shame, because of all the misinformation about sex, and there's a lot of misinformation, we just somehow have all adopted this belief that it just should sort of magically work because our bodies know what to do. And we should be able to generate that in the bedroom every time, orgasms for all, feel deeply connected and so much pleasure, and then go about our day. But what else in life is like that?
Nothing.
Zero things that we actually deem important and prioritize for our health.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds, I know you've written about that and you've had that experience of actually going and studying and talking to people and refining, and that led to what for you? Like,
oh, for me sexually?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm such a different person than I was. I mean, first I only have sex when, I want to have sex. That was one thing I want to say is that I used to think that sex was I looked at it like a duty, and I was doing it. I didn't think I could say no. I didn't think I could stop it. I didn't think I had any agency over my body or over sex. Yeah. So I think the first thing is realizing that pleasure is my birthright. I'm responsible for my orgasm. And I can also have sex on my terms while also being a good collaborator with somebody. So that's really how it's changed. Yeah. And I've learned different ways that I, need to be touched. And I've learned how to talk about that. And I've explored, I just explore and play and have a very open dialogue about it. My partners, I want to know about them, and we discuss all the things I talk about. I practice like scheduling sex, or when is it going to be a good time? Or, in most relationships, there's always someone who's initiating and someone who's rejecting. So how do you normalize that in your relationship and make sure that you both get your needs met? You're having sex in ways that feel good. And
so
you want to talk more about my sex life, don't you?
I want to talk more about your sex life. No. I want to get... I mean, role modeling. Yeah. So, as you talk about communication as lubrication, which is such a great line, because I don't know. I find communication the hottest thing.
I'm with you. We're with you. I'm like, can we talk about your trauma right now? I'm getting really turned on.
I don't know about you, but when I've had a rupture and repair cycle with my partner, and I'm like, we are communicating, we're talking it through. By the end of that repair, I'm like, take off your clothes. And it's not like makeup sex. I'm not talking about that, but I'm like, oh my gosh, the depth of communication and vulnerability that just presented itself, it's so hot.
It's the sexiest thing in the world, right?
Sexiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
What are some cues or ways we can help people communicate better? Because there's so much need for it.
So much need for it. Well, I think the first thing would be, if they want to communicate about sex, my 3 T's of communication, timing, turf, and tone. Okay. And it really works for any awkward conversation. But since all the years people saying like, what I hear what you're saying, but how do I do it? When do I do it? Is this, just remember this. Okay. The timing is when you are hanging with your partner. It's date night. You're in a good place. You're not halt. You're not hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If you're any of those places, that is not a great time to talk about sex.
Yeah.
The tone is curious and open and supportive and light, even though it might feel heavy. You got to remember, we're having a collaborative conversation. And then the turf is outside the bedroom. And so for many people, they think, well, I'm already in the bedroom. It's happening. If we were cooking, I'd be talking about the recipe in the kitchen. But with sex, it's different because we're already in an aroused state. That's a place. Perhaps we're in an aroused state. We're like, oh, why don't you ever want sex again? Or we're going to sleep. It's just better to find a place. And what I often recommend is when you are going on a walk.
Yeah.
Because then you could still be side by side. You don't have to make eye contact, but it's still intimate. Or you're on a road trip.
Yeah.
It's a great time to talk about sex.
When you're stuck in a car.
Stuck in a car. Nobody can escape now, and no one can hear us.
There's
That's
nothing like entrapment to help with communication. Yeah.
And my partner, we had to when we driving. He's like, okay, we're in the car. I'm like, oh God, like he uses it on me. He's like, so let's talk about this. I'm like, fuck, okay. No, but that's just a great place to start with sex. And then also in smart sex, I actually put a bunch of, the communication chapter is pretty weighty. I put a lot of just actual scripts for people to walk through because people want to know, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like, how do I ask for a threesome or how do I ask it? So I try to give people some tools to help them. But I think that's a great place to start. Just remember where you're at, how you want to say it.
Dr. Emily, how do I ask for a threesome?
That's why you called me here too.
Or with a friend.
Well, okay. Do you really want to go into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
So you don't go from 0 to threesome. You're not like, hey, I think it'd be hot for us to go have sex with someone else. Would you be down? Let's say if you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
You don't, there has to be some groundwork. You have to like warm up the conversation.
Okay.
So first you want to make sure that you're in a relationship where maybe you've already talked about your desires and your fantasies. But if you haven't, which I found is a lot of couples, perhaps you're out, you're having dinner, you're like, oh, so I thought, let's say you're at a couple, we want to talk about a couple who hasn't really talked about these things before. We can start with them.
Yeah.
So first you want to start with a conversation about the current sex that you're having, the state of the union, the state of your sex union. How's our sex going? What are we into? Because we both agree we want to be great lovers to each other. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. I have a growth mindset around sex. I have you growth mindset around sex. Okay, good. So let's talk about it. Like, are there any like fantasies you have? Anything you've been wanting to try? Yeah. Right? Let your partner answer. Yeah. And I still don't think you might want to jump into threesome, depending on what they say. Yeah. I've never had a fantasy. I don't fantasize. Like, what about you? So I think it's more like, and depending how confident you feel with your partner. The reason I'm saying don't bring it up is because I see these scenarios where like our first conversation can't be, let's bring your best friend into the bedroom, right? No. Definitely don't bring the best friend into the bedroom. But I think just conversation fantasies, would you be open? Yeah. Can we explore? And then maybe you could say, I think, and then once you get there, you could say, I think I've had some fantasies about, imagining you having sex with somebody else, like us having sex with someone else, because I think it would be so hot to see you aroused and turned on with somebody. Is that something that you would be into? Yeah. Like that's, once you get there, what do they think about that? And when you're bringing up this fantasy, it's really important to make it about the pleasure that you're both going to have. Yeah. And that's about me getting off. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think it'd just be really hot to, fuck someone else. Like, that's just not going to go with a lot of people. No. So
you got to titrate that shit.
You got to titrate that shit. You do have to titrate everything. You really do.
You got to read the room.
You got to read the room. So I'm telling you, if you guys have never, you could be a few conversations away from threesome. Yeah. I have this great guide on my site, the Yes, No, Maybe list, that's been downloaded like hundreds and thousands of times because people find it just a great tool for couples to sit together. And it has about 80 sex acts on it. Yeah. And everything from kissing, is that a yes, no, or maybe? Yeah. Spanking, is that a yes, and no, maybe? Threesomes. I mean, you could jump right, that is on there as well.
That's an entry point,
That's an entry point, but it is on there. Yeah. But then you could sit down and then it's a really fun game. I didn't realize that we both like dirty talk. We're both yeses. Yeah. Why don't we start with that? Because what I found, Dr. Scott, is that most people just need some kernels of places to go. They want some inspiration. They don't know what's on the sexual menu. So it's a fabulous sexual menu.
Yeah. I have done the menu with my partner.
You did.
We did. We did it together. And we basically circled the same stuff, which was great.
Did you know that beforehand that you would have been circling the same stuff, or was that?
No, some of the stuff I knew, but the other stuff I was like, oh, and we both were in alignment almost entirely through the whole thing of things we're not interested in at this point in our relationship.
That's perfect.
And there was one thing he chose that I was like, no, not for me.
Okay.
And it was a really interesting moment. I want to talk to you about this. It's like, what happens when someone is a big yes and someone is a big no? How do you compromise?
Well, sex is all about compromise
Yeah,
too,
right?
because I think people think, oh God, so we could go back to the threesome thing. So let's say you have the conversation with your partner and you are a yes, and your partner is like, that's a hell no for me. That is a no. And then you're like, oh, but this is my main fantasy. How do we what do we do now?
And resentment often builds.
Yeah, resentments and judgments. So that's why you have to be ready to be built. Talk about so then we get to be curious, open partner, and say, well, so you don't just jump right there. You might say like, well, I don't know that that's my thing, but tell me more about it. Tell me more about why a threesome is so hot to you. So have them explain it to you. Yeah. I just love the sounds, or I love the thought of it, or all the things. And then you gather more information. So maybe a place to start would be like, well, maybe we could watch some threesome porn together. Yeah. Let's watch it together and just see how we feel, or let's dirty talk it. Let's role play it. Would that be satisfying? And maybe I would find the no partner actually, I actually thought that was hot. Maybe we could try it. And maybe the yes partner is like, that was hot. That solved, that scratched my itch for today. Yeah. That was a good place to go. And I love that you're willing to explore it. Even the fact that as my partner, you were willing to watch the porn, that feels good to me. So that's one way to kind of work around these things. If there's other things, usually we can, sex is there's just so many ways to play. So if there's, your partner might just be no to a threesome, but again, you could expand. I'm trying to think of some other things that people would say no to, but there's always an area to find, to get for both people to be satisfied. Very rarely is there a hard no. Now, if somebody has a no, that could be that devastating for a couple. Yeah. I shouldn't say that, because in every case there's probably
sometimes it's we're in open relationships.
Yeah, that could be a no. Right.
That
open
could be
relationships.
A no and a yes. Yeah.
But I feel like if it's oh, you don't want to talk dirty, why? Yeah. Well, what if there's just ways to be why don't we listen to audio erotica together? Yeah. And we could learn some ways to do it. So a lot of times our really strong no's come from a place of fear, or a place of not being enough, or a place of not really understanding the question. Yeah. What do you mean by dirty talk? Could you tell me more about what the dirty talk that's hot for you? Oh, I could call you my daddy. That's fine, but I don't want you to call me a bitch. So it's all a negotiation, and it's all gathering more information and finding what our sexual, what we actually want in the bedroom. And, so.
That's such great advice. It feels so accessible. I hear it. I hear it as a practitioner, as a clinician, people coming in and they're I was with a patient a few weeks ago, and they were talking about sex, and I was like, when was the last time you felt satisfied or met and sexually? And he was like, I don't remember. And I said, when was the last time you talked about sex with your partner? And he was like, I never have. And I was like, remind me how long you've been together. And it was 15 years. And I was like, curious, what gets in the way of you talking about it or communicating? And it was such a shyness. There was clearly underlying elements of shame. Yeah. And shyness. Yeah. And
it's so common. People are together that long and they don't talk about it. I would say that was probably, I don't know, the majority of people, but it's shyness, it's shame. It's not knowing what to say. Yeah. Not even knowing where to start. Yeah. Yeah.
And I love in your book, again, the prompts, because you can just begin with how was that for you?
How was it?
How was it?
Yeah, what was good? What was good? What would you like to try more of? Yeah. What was memorable? Yeah. Let's talk about the 3 most memorable times we've had sex together. That's a great starting point for couples also, if they want to talk about it. Okay, let's talk about our 3 most memorable times, because there's also research that has shown that couples who reminisce actually helps them with their connection and intimacy and all that. So what if we reminisce about our sex life?
Yeah.
Oh, that time we were on vacation. Because in those memories is some really useful data.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that was, I forgot that time, but that was memorable to you. So what does that tell me about your desire and arousal and what might be required for you to be turned on? Okay, let's do that again. Or, you know, so just, and that's a fun way to do it. It's inclusive. It's open. We were both there.
Yeah.
We both did it. Yeah. And what do we want to do more of?
And memory and fantasy are both physiologically stimulating. So it's like even in talking about the memory, you're getting aroused.
Getting aroused, that's it.
Or whatever the sensation that you had during that experience that was worth bringing back up and talking about. I
love that. It's true. You have that, you're reliving it in your body again. And so therefore you're connecting more to your partner.
And this is the thing that's interesting about fantasy is like, I think a lot of people think it's like, am I not enough if I want to like go into fantasy? But truly it's just another opportunity to have another texture of sex and sensation.
Yeah, because sex gets stale.
It does.
In long-term relationships, it's going to, if I could like normalize something else there, it's going to get stale. There is nobody because what we crave is, you know, variety and spontaneity. And it's really hard to get that in a relationship where you are doing the same things, the sex acts the same way over and over and over again. And so, but that notion of I am not enough, am I not enough is what the refrain that people often have in their head when their partner talks about sex. And so that's why you have to do a lot of no, we're great together. We're so good. But like how amazing we have another adventure together. Like we travel to new cities every year. We, you know, try different foods. Like it's just another way to expand our connection.
I love that positive framework of expanding the connection, the relationship. So it's not perceived as a deficit because it's so easy for a partner to be like, hey, I want to try this. And you're like, am I not enough? What am I doing wrong? As opposed to really holding true to the fact that like, ooh, everything can be improved. Like going back to being an engineer, your skill sets can always be improved.
Everything can be. But again, with sex, because we don't talk about it, we think, oh, well then, and most people do go to that place. If their partner brings it up, they immediately feel shame. I'm not doing enough. I'm a bad lover to you. What's up? And so that's why it's so, you know, if we were giving advice to people about like how to ask for a raise, say, or how to ask for something out, like it would be very concrete. It wouldn't be, but this is like, it's so gentle. It's so like, you have to be so mindful that it is a landmine. Because we haven't ventured on that territory before. So but we are enough. It's just about part of the process, right? Of, you know, connecting, exploring, and growing. It's what's going to get people out of their ruts and have more pleasure.
Yeah. Now, what might be some things, you called it pleasure thieves in the book. So like we're talking about how to enter in, how to increase pleasure activate. What are some things like block or get in the way? Okay.
So the pleasure thieves these are the top three. And I get into more of them in the book, but stress, trauma, and shame. These are the three biggest killers of our sex drive and our ability to have the most pleasurable sex. So
when we're talking about, stress is normal. Like we all have stresses, but it's kind of like, especially when it compounds like so many stresses where we're not, where our energy reserve is in response to the stress and not able to give it to someone else and trauma's, is certainly more serious than that. And so like when it's trauma, do you recommend they go see a therapist versus stress? Do you have specific practices?
Yeah, I have practices for all of it and suggestions. But first, if we want to take like stress and anxiety, first of all, they are one of the top killers of our sex drive because of the physiological response you're having in your body, like arousal and like the cortisol spiking. They can't all live together and you can't experience them both at the same time. And so if you are experiencing a lot of anxiety, stress, it's going to show up in the bedroom. And so just the practices for dealing with your stress and anxiety through, therapy, breath work, meditation, naming it, so all of those things are going to seep into your bedroom, into your ability to be aroused. And then trauma. I think that, as you well know, trauma isn't going to heal itself.
No.
And people have to think, well, it's been so long now. I can't possibly be feeling that. And as we know, it is living in our bodies. And so there's a lot of great, therapies, that I highly recommend that EMDR is great for sexual, any kind of sexual traumas, but any trauma, you realize that it doesn't matter what the trauma is, it could still be impacting your ability to, be connected in the bedroom. It's really
like, trauma shows up as like an anchor sometimes, like pulling you down away from your partner, or there are specific areas where you are disconnected or dissociated, where you are not fully able to be present to receive or connect with someone. Mm-hmm. And
it shows up so many different ways. You can't receive, you can't give, you can't be present.
Or it's scary, or there's too much sensation or not enough sensation there. And, and I just want to really name, like, it can heal. Like sometimes like we're with a partner and we're like, not the best sex of our life. And we might not realize that some of it might be our dissociation, some of it might be their dissociation. And like given time and practice, people can come more fully back to their body and the sex just gets better.
Should we get into that? Some of the ways to do you want to talk about
trauma?
I feel like
you were talking about, should we get into sex?
No, but I feel like you talk about trauma a lot on your... But is it helpful here to get into how you shows up in the bedroom, or how to deal with that with a partner? And how to know if you are disassociated? Or?
Yeah, this is why I don't like the term like chemistry. Like I get it. We have but it just sounds so like magical and mysterious of like, oh my God, we just have chemistry, where it's like, okay, first of all, chemistry can just be trauma bonding. Okay. So
right.
Let's have a moment for
My
that.
trauma's like your trauma.
My trauma, your trauma. Oh yeah.
We've all been there, right?
Yeah. Or like, okay. So there's that component of it, but like, sometimes people don't feel like, I remember I had a partner and they would often dissociate during sex. And so I couldn't experience them or feel them feeling me. And it brought up a lot in me of feeling abandoned. And I was about to toss this relationship aside. And then because I felt so abandoned, I felt like, oh, we just don't have good chemistry. That's what I kept saying. And I said to my friends, well, if you don't have good chemistry, you're never going to get it. And this is when I was younger, like last week. And no, just kidding.
Right.
And the truth is that person went to therapy. They did do EMDR. They did a bunch of other things. And I dealt with my abandonment issues. They dealt with their dissociation. And we had great sex and great chemistry. And it was a fabulous relationship. But it's so easy to toss it aside if it's not this like magic at first.
Yeah, that goes back to the same, thing that like, we don't really know about sex. We're just going to close our eyes, hope for the best. Hopefully the magic will be there.
Yeah.
And it just could be further from the truth. Right? Yeah. We are all living in these bodies and bringing our full selves to the table and into the bedroom. And so until we really understand what it's like to be present, to work. I mean, it's a lot of work though, then like saying like, how are we going to find someone who's done the work and who has chemistry with us? But again, also recognizing that in every relationship, you get to work on yourselves, you get to grow, you get to work on yourselves individually and as a couple. And so I think if both partners are willing to do the work, you could actually you could create that magic, if you will, or that connection once you realize what's holding you back and what you both want. And then you learn and then you feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And like, and truly it's like, I can't say this enough. If someone's willing to do the work, stick around for a little while. It's worth giving them a beat and a little, some time and space.
Yeah. It does take a while, but it can be, I mean, it does take a while to go through this process, but even just somebody saying like your example earlier, I'm here for you. Like I'm ready to take a pause. Yeah. I'm ready to see how else we can connect.
Yeah. So going back even to unpack the trauma and stress piece a bit, just from like a nervous system perspective, we call it sensory motor balance. And this is where in trauma, there's a sensory like impact, right? There's something that happens usually to us and we freeze. We're not able to metabolize and process it. So we don't have this balance between incoming information and moving it out or metabolizing it. And so one of the things that can be just super helpful if we're having a lot of stress is to mobilize it. So literally shaking, like shaking our bodies, shaking all the stored energy inside, because then we have room and availability for someone else to meet us. But if we're already full, like them touching us is going to feel noxious, or we just don't have availability anywhere in our body for someone else. So that's
I love shaking. I mean, shaking is like, can we do it together as a couple if we're in the bedroom? I mean, how great! Like these, I think these embodiment practices of breathing, shaking, all the things will help us both be like, okay, we've let it go. We've released the day. We've released things in our body. And that practice too, right? Just can help you release trauma over time.
Yeah.
So rolling, all the things that you could do. And then you both like show up a little bit more present, maybe each time, or I mean, it definitely will help you get rid of the day, at least the stress of the day or the anxiety of the day.
Yeah. I mean, this is why a lot of people actually enjoy sex because of the motoric aspect of it. They're using that as the stress release which, you know, is, well, do you have an opinion about that?
No. I think that's confusing for people because I feel so much better after sex. It is a stress relief.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's true. And that's great. Like, I never want to I'm not going to shame you and say like, you shouldn't use sex as a stress relief. And I think it's easier for men because they're pretty much going to have an orgasm every time.
Yeah, exactly.
And the orgasm is a relief. It might be temporary, but it is a relief from the anxiety.
Yeah.
And we already covered how for vulva owners, for women, it's not so much, so that it turns and it's like, why was I doing this whole thing and I didn't even have pleasure?
Yeah. Yeah.
But connection can be a stress relief too.
Absolutely.
Like sometimes we just want to touch. The touch can be a reliever as well. So I think if you're only using it as a stress relief and then you realize you're having pleasure, then we need to work on that.
Yeah. And that's such a nuanced caveat that's so important to recognize, that it's like, if you're using sex as a depository for your stress to like release it, then are there other places you can do that so that you actually come into the connection with someone both more available to begin with, so that like the streamline of connection is from the get-go as opposed to the point of ejaculation, when that's the moment you feel better.
Well, I love what you just said about it. You're both more available.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. We're talking about if you're coming in to a sexual situation, whether it's your past trauma, whether it's your past 20 minutes, your day, your life, it's all in there in the bedroom. But these practices that we talk about are helping you literally just be more available for the actual connection with somebody, the mindset, the presence, the body, the touch. Yeah. And most of us are showing up just like not doing any of this work. And so sex is, fraught.
Yeah. One of the things I love in your book too is kind of this idea of like mapping your pleasure. Like, and you talk about it, and I love that masturbation is in the chapter before, like pleasure mapping with a partner. And can we talk about like how, I don't know, self-exploration, what that leads to?
Yes. Then? I mean, I call it solo sex in the book.
Solo sex.
But I really want to rebrand sex. All the terms like masturbation. Like, triggers. Solo sex is such an important practice to feeling connected to our bodies and who we are and what we actually like. And it's a way of giving ourselves pleasure, orgasm, knowledge, connection. So I highly recommend it. I don't have to always recommend it to everybody. I find that people with penises are like, I got this. I'm good. I'm doing it. Sometimes they might, but they need to more. But I feel like with women too, there's maybe more shame around it. Yeah. There's, not as much permission. And so just, whenever I tell people it's actually good for us, it's good for our mental health, our physical health. Like I love giving people like if they're like, oh, wow, I guess I feel better. It's actually good for me. It's good for my sex life. Yeah. And so, but for a lot of us, we grew up places where it was shameful, it was wrong. And we also feel that if we get into a relationship with someone,
we feel like we're cheating on them too.
I can also feel like, oh my God, masturbation's cheating, or I caught my partner masturbating.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that is a very, very common question we get asked because of all this misunderstanding about sex that we've covered. But I just want to let people know that like your partner is going to masturbate. They masturbated before they met you. They're going to masturbate with you. They might do it after. Like, it's just an important part of, and for that, it could be a stress relief for people. Yeah. It could be a way of connecting, of coming home, of learning. But again, for people who aren't having satisfying sex or pleasurable sex, or they don't know how to ask for what they want, masturbation can also be a great time to figure that out.
Discovery.
Like, do the work, discovery, exploration.
Well, and I hear that you're talking about the difference between like embodied solo play or embodied masturbation versus like kind of a reflexive action, which is really different.
It's a very, very different. It's like, I just got to get off to get through the day or to just, but a mindful masturbation practice is really more about the presence and what can I learn about what actually turns me on and what feels good. You know, how, and you know, when you're doing that, you can think like, well, how would I explain to a partner how to touch me in this way? Or think about it after, because we don't want to get you two in your heads. But if you become the expert of your own pleasure and your own body, and then you can, you know, impart that wisdom to your partners, to your lovers.
I love that. You become your own pleasure expert, and then you transmit that to your partner through communication, which is lubrication. And they also become an expert in your pleasure. Wow. I love that.
Yeah. And they're not mind readers, and most people think they are. They're going to figure it out. They're going to know, and they don't, and they won't. And even if you told them once, people are like, oh, but I showed them. Like, no, it takes a while to learn new things. So yeah.
And you're not going to ruin it by communicating. You're probably just going to get it better or get what you want. Gosh forbid.
Right. I mean, people, that's how you get what you want. They're not just going to figure it out. You know, they don't. So we have to, it's like, think of yourself, you're writing your own owner's manual, and then you get to like pass it off.
Yeah. I want to talk about the O.
Okay.
The okay of okay. You know, how important is having an orgasm?
Well, it's a great question. And I don't think my answer is going to be as popular with everybody. But we love orgasms. Like it is it is the dessert, it is the icing on the cake. It's everything. Orgasms are fantastic and a really, really good time. Yeah. But the more we focus on orgasm as the end goal, we're less likely to enjoy the journey and the process of connection and intimacy and touch and all the things that we've talked about. And when we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to orgasm, not only is it's less likely to happen too. Sometimes we're like, oh, am I going to come? Is it going to happen? And it won't. So really just focusing on connection and you know, what feels good is definitely the way to go. And you might just find that you have more orgasms afterwards.
Yeah.
However, that to say there is an orgasm gap, and men are more likely to orgasm than women. Women take longer to orgasm. So that is like the gap that I'm talking about. And so this is an understanding definitely in heterosexual couples to understand that there is a gap. There's certain things that need to happen so we can have ours too as a woman. But I think that, you know, we got to do a whole chapter on orgasm. We got to talk about it. But I don't think that's the end all be all for sex.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, like, because when most of us think of orgasm, they think about like a culmination, like the symphony culminates and like there's an explosive whatever. But is there a sense of like that the richness of orgasm could be there the whole time? Yeah,
there is. I mean, you could have an embodied, you know, connected, full body orgasm that's a building through your body. And it's not just about that, you know, one like ejaculation moment or that orgasm, that the whole experience could feel orgasmic and pleasurable and connected. And that is a great practice.
Have you had that?
I like the whole time it felt like I've had times where sex felt very orgasmic and pleasurable for longer than others. And I have. Not in a yes. I think that I'm also, you know, I know what it takes to get there. Vacation sex is wonderful. Sex on the weekend, sex when you are with a partner who's also into that. But I'd say I have more present mindful sex than not. But the whole time it feels like an orgasm and not going over, because there are also other practices of, you know, really if you look at like, you know, in other, sorry, I'm just trying to think other religions, like other like tantric, Taoist practices of men having full body, and women too, orgasms and not ejaculating, and the experience of bringing the energy over and through your body and moving the orgasm. And I have done some practices like that, but I don't live in that space. But I know that there's so much to learn from that, and I would love to live in that space. Okay.
Just like moving through the world in a constant orgasm.
People do, and I I don't think they do every day. I don't think anything happens every day. And I have amazing sex, and I have sex that's just okay too. Just because it's my job doesn't mean that like I live there. And I think for some people who
thank you for normalizing that.
I want to know. Oh my god! There's times I don't want sex. There's times that I know that I'm not going to have an orgasm. There's times that my partner wants and I don't. Yeah. I go through everything that everyone else does. Yeah. I mean, the only difference is I know how to name it, how to communicate about it. Yeah. You know. And so, but I go through all of that. But yes, I know all the people in like the sex magic space and the sex witch, and they have orgasms for days. And I've been friends with them and I interviewed them, but I don't live yet in their place. But it would sounds like a nice place to visit and to go eventually. Does that make sense? Yeah, me either. Do you know what I mean? People are like tantric and goddess and live all together in a commune and all the things. Like yes. But I haven't been there.
I wonder. I mean, I have had similar experiences with you.
Not yet.
Not yet, baby. How does so much of my episodes turn into flirting? I don't know. They do. But, you know, I've had those experiences where it's like the whole time was like just cosmic. And I've had experiences just walking through the world where I feel like that sort of cosmic energy, that specialness. But I don't like, I appreciate that it's not all the time because then it highlights the moments that are.
Right. Well, exactly. Can you imagine getting anything done if you're always in an orgasmic state? Right? Yeah. Like these people like, it would be a really hard thing to do. But yes, I mean, I think orgasm can be described too as like, as a energetic state that we could feel bliss and pleasure in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I mean,
but the orgasm specifically is a, specific, place you go to. But that feeling of arousal in your body and being able to circulate that energy is a powerful practice.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
This show is also brought to you by the absolutely stunning and powerful tools of transformation that are created by Omala. Oof, even the name Omala transports you to a place of flow and vitality. These are some of my favorite products ever. They have an amazing color-changing yoga mat that responds to your temperature and presence and reflects back your posture in real time. There's this incredible smelling skin balm candle that heats up to activate all the essential oils and vitamins that your skin has been craving. I mean, look, if I could live in a giant bath of this candle, I would 100% do it. They also have these journals that lead you into profound insight, and then you get to plant those journals to create a stunning flower garden. What? I mean, if that's not deep and inventive, I don't know what is. If you're someone who desires to live a luxurious flow of life and who believes in transformative wellness, then you have to check out Omala. Omala is giving my listeners an exclusive discount to treat yourself to something that is as special as you, boo. All you have to do is go to omala.com, that's OMALA.com, and use the code DrScott10 at checkout. And a portion of every purchase goes to an incredible charity. You got this. Speaking of powerful practices,
yes,
I got some games that I want to play.
Oh, fun. Okay, let's play.
So the first one is based on your book. Okay, so you talk a lot about role-playing in your book.
Love role-playing.
I know, and I have yet to get into it. So this is when there's no one I trust more to get into role-playing than you.
I'm so excited. Oh.
So you have a list of role-playing sort of options in your book, and I thought we could do a little role-playing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read some of these. And a lot of them have like power dynamics to it, which I think is interesting.
You need the power dynamics to elicit the arousal. And sex needs that too. It's that masculine, feminine balance of energy. Someone's leading, someone's following. So that's what makes it. Like if you're both I guess you could both be working at a restaurant. You could both be bartenders and also, but this is a built-in power play. So someone's
this is an aspect of role playing that has power play. I got it. Also, one of my favorites is two superheroes.
Okay.
So it's really a toss-up for me between aliens, and superheroes.
Oh my God, those would be hard. That's what's so funny. Like those would be the hard ones for me. I'm kind of like alien.
Well, we can
only
start
because
with
I'm not
one.
like in the sci-fi like that. That's harder for me.
I love sci-fi.
Okay, see, I don't.
Oh,
but as I'm saying, I'm not like
okay.
alien. I'm like, but I could be like, okay. I feel like I need a voice. Okay.
Do you want to do alien, superhero, or alien or superheroes?
Well, I don't know the power dynamic in superheroes, actually. That's
I'm
the one
into that.
Is that
maybe
interesting?
That's why I'm into it. I don't
that's
like power
the only
dynamics.
One that does, because if we're both superheroes.
I know. Maybe.
Unless I'm a fallen or an old superhero.
Oh my God, always
I'm
in
like
that power
old
dynamic.
Batman or something. I don't know. Not that old is a thing. Or I broke a leg.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, okay, so these are so these are double. Okay. So it could be alien.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're alien. I'm the person who wants to be abducted by alien?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay. Wait, who has the power though? The alien has the power, right? Because I'm abducting. I'm abducting
Maybe
you.
I choose ones that don't have power dynamics.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey there, alien. How's it flying through the sky?
You don't look like anything I've ever seen before.
That's right. I'm a hottie tooth hottie, and I'm into your spaceship.
Do you want to go for a ride on it? Have you ever been on a spaceship?
No, I've never been on a spaceship, but I'm certainly into being taken by you and examined.
Really? Do you think, no, but see, okay, let me just normalize
Tell me, give
Everybody
me some pointers.
is going
I don't know how to
laugh
role play.
during role play.
Okay, they will.
You are going to laugh, you're going to giggle,
Okay.
and that might go on for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, might go on for 5 minutes. But eventually, if one of you gets to keep it.
Yeah, okay.
Keep it stay. And then eventually you'll be like, okay, I get it. And then you get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about role playing is then you actually get into another place. You're no longer like Scott and your partner. I'm no longer Emily and my partner. I'm like, oh, we're in this thing together.
Yeah.
It's a shared experience. We're building a new story.
Yeah.
And I might just end up picturing you as like someone that I'm about to abduct. And how hot is that?
Yeah.
So it transforms. You move through. So everyone feels awkward. Everyone laughs. But then that's funny and fun.
That's so interesting. I never that awkwardness, and I mean, I guess
I'm going to get permission. Yeah, I'm going to give people permission, and then you just get into it. I mean, it's fun when there's. I mean, this one is a hard narrative.
This is a hard one.
Hard narrative, but like masseuse and patient, or like things that are like teeth and teacher and student. I mean, it just. Anyway, we keep going with alien.
We had teacher and parent in there.
Oh yeah, teacher and parent.
Okay.
Teacher and parent's good. No, teacher and student. But anyway, with this one, it's like, no, I've got this. I've got a spaceship. You want to come on it? Like, tell me why you want to. Like, it's like, I don't think you're ready for it. Get on the spaceship. You don't look. You're not wearing the right kind of clothes.
Should I take off my clothes?
I mean, not yet. But I have something that you actually have to wear to get onto my spaceship.
Does it have zippers?
It might have. Why you ask so many questions?
I like zippers.
We might have some zippers, some snaps.
Yeah. Does it snap in the front or the back? Wait, I don't feel like I'm being very sexy.
You're not. You're being very. No, I'm in charge.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're not comfortable with me being in charge. Maybe
I'm super uncomfortable.
I'm the
you
bossy
take charge.
alien.
Oh, yeah. I'm into bossy.
So it doesn't matter. I can tell you that your clothes are going to be off, and you're going to be wearing one of my spacesuits.
Okay. Do you have my size?
Let's see. You're tall.
Mm-hmm. I am tall.
And I like the way you look.
Thank you.
Handsome. You got like long, strong arms.
Yeah, I work out.
I can tell you work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I have something that probably fits you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I put it on now?
Well, in this process of you getting into the spaceship, which is actually not as easy as it sounds, I actually have to be the one driving and in charge and telling you, what you can wear, what you can do. So I'm going to have to go back into my spaceship for a minute, and I'm going to come down with this, costume that you have to, with the spacesuit that you have to put on.
Okay, I'll wait here and play.
But when I'm away, I hope that you could maybe take off your clothes. Okay. And when I come back, I'm going to have something for you.
Okay.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Wait, are you hot? Are you hot and bothered?
I got into my dominant role, which is rare for me, and I was like, yes, I kind of like this.
I was getting into it too. There was a moment. There was a moment
where you're like,
yeah.
Which moment? When I said you were hot.
No, I felt nervous then. I think it was like when you started telling me what I should do, even in the role playing. Like when you broke character to tell me what to do in the role playing.
Oh,
like that.
That was hot.
When you broke the fourth wall of the role play,
Yeah.
I was into
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's certainly something that like, I mean, like maybe because I grew up as an actor, but like I like taking on another character is so strange to me in the bedroom because I'm like, I've had to take so many layers off to try to be authentic.
Sense to be disassociated. But then I guess from a place of connection, you can still bring in the connected principles while you're being someone else. Yeah. A fun, easy role play is the sexy stranger when you meet at a bar. So I love this one because you don't have to like, it's not as much of a, you got to like
bizarre fantasy.
Fantasy, but even just meeting again for the first time. So telling your partner like, let's meet tonight at 8:00. We're going to meet at this bar and I'm going to show up and I'm going to be someone else and you're going to be someone else. Maybe it's your alter ego. It's who you know, and it's just kind of fun to get to know each other from a different place. Yeah. And like, or remembering what it felt like when you first met them. Yeah. Like, do you come here often? Where are you from? And then just, I don't know, it just suspends everything else you know about it. No, not suspends. It just sort of, you see them in a different light.
I love that.
And it's just a fun, I mean, you love acting. Yeah, it's fresh.
It's very fresh. I did more recently wake up next to my partner and I pretended not to know them. That was not a role play. That was just being funny.
How'd you get in my bed?
I was like, who are you? How did you get here? And he was like, what? Are you okay? And I was like, oh, am I? Who are you? And
that was, you played the amnesia patient.
I played the amnesia patient.
How'd it go? Was it hot?
No. He was scared. And then I was like, I'm fine. I was just being playful. Okay. And he was like, was that role play? And I was like, not well.
You could do this, Scott.
I can do it.
Yeah, we could do all of it. It's just, so I think in Smart Sex, I'm really just giving people all the wisdom of almost 20 years of all the tips and tricks. And people could just find kernels that work for them and that don't work. Because there's so much in there to play with. And role playing, doesn't have to be for every day, but it can be just a fun place to visit.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to, before we get to some of the audience questions, I found some terms online that I thought would be fun to talk about.
Okay.
And these are, you might have heard of these words. I had never heard of some of them. And it's spectrophilia. And this is a phenomenon involving sexual attraction to ghosts or sexual arousal from images and mirrors. So that's... Yeah.
Scary.
I mean, like, boo.
Boo. People have fantasies or fetishes about so many different things. Like there's a lot of them online, but that would be, who knows? Like maybe they were watching
Ghosts
or watching a thriller, watching something. And then that sort of got linked up to their eroticism in that moment. Yes. Or maybe they were masturbating and thought they saw a ghost. And then now forever a time that becomes their
thing. That's such a good point of like, you know, the neurons, or the things that wire together are like, could
stay together.
Yeah, stay together. So it's like, the coupling of movies. I mean, I have arachnophobia from watching Arachnophobia as a kid.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
You're afraid of spiders?
I was totally scared of spiders.
Oh my God, I'm wondering.
No, I've worked through it in therapy quite a bit. But yeah, and definitely don't feel comfortable swimming in the ocean because of Jaws. Yeah. Okay. That one still haven't gotten over. But
can you go swimming in the ocean?
I mean, I go up to my waist and then back out. This one I really liked. It's I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, but we'll go for it. It's charesia, a form of sexual intercourse where the emphasis is on the sensations of connectivity and extended intercourse, with orgasms not being the goal. It's kind of what we were talking about.
Yeah, that is what we were talking about. I love that. I love the orgasm not being the goal and just connection and touch.
Charesia.
What's the
origin?
How do you spell it? Yeah, what's CAR?
KAREZZA or ZZA if you're Canadian or Australian.
Oh, charesia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's like a product line called that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That makes sense.
Like
I think it's like a weed, like a edible something. I think so, right? I think so.
Cottaging. Cottaging is a term used in the UK to describe the practices of engaging in sexual acts in a public restroom.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
But not in Europe. What was it called? Like exhibitionism maybe? Or no. Yeah. I think I fooled around in a public restroom. I'm sure I have.
I would really like to join the Mile High Club. I just want to announce that publicly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can probably make that happen.
I've been researching on how do people get away with it. And I've just seen a lot of horror stories, international flights for sure. And I'm about to take a big international flight. It's like 32 hours. And so, I was researching, I'm like, how do people get away with it? And it's just been a lot of very embarrassing stories of getting caught that I've found so far on Reddit. Yeah.
Well, I think you should.
I'm going to try it, though.
Try it.
I'm definitely going to try it.
Let me know how it goes. Bring some lube on the plane.
I will text you right away.
Yeah, I know.
As soon as it's...
It is illegal, people.
Cuckling.
Cuckolding or cuckling?
Cuckolding, sorry.
Cuckolding, yeah. That's a really common fantasy. Cuckolding, the cuckold. Yeah. And that is a fantasy. Originally, the origins of it, but the gender won't really... Anyone could have this fantasy, but originally it came from from a man having a fantasy about watching his wife have sex with somebody else while he watches. Now, I don't know what.
Cheated on kind
of? No, but like he's present.
Oh, he's present.
And it's like it's a route. So there's a lot of different layers to this.
Okay.
For some people, it could be based on this. It's this transgression. It's this really like horror. The thought of my wife being with somebody else is so awful that it's actually humiliating and makes me feel really bad at myself. But then that is sort of arousing as well. And so I want to do this fantasy, right? I want to see that. I want to have, and then in some cases, it's just really hot to see my partner being, and again, it can be my partner being pleased by somebody else while I'm watching. Yeah. So cuckolding is typically the partner is like watching their partner have sex with someone else while they watch. So again, it would be different for everybody. Like sometimes it's about the process or the fear leading up to it gets transmitted into arousal, or it's just hot. But yeah, cuckolding is actually a really common fantasy.
Do you find it's hard, or was there ever a time in your life where you had to work through judging or judgment, or have you always been like kind of judgment free?
I'm the least judgmental person, and I don't know why. I really do not. I do not judge, and I don't. Maybe that's why I can do my job, but because I have this. The way I see most things, I can see most sides to things. I can understand. I can get to the place of where I see where the person's coming from, and sort of but I don't have any judgment. I'm like. Because I also see all the cases of how it works for people. And I understand that, like, I want it to be consensual. I'm not forcing my partner to go do this thing. And so, although sometimes with cuckolding they do, but no, I don't judge it as much. Are you?
No, especially not as a therapist.
Yeah.
And, as a human, which is my primary thing in the world, I judgment is just not something I feel I have inherently in me. I think it's the same thing of like when I hear a sexual fetish that's, I would say, definitely out of my league of like comfort, I still go, oh, tell me more. Like I'm curious.
Yeah.
And part of the curiosity is like, I wonder where that emerged from, or how that, like the origin story of that fetish or that desire, that impulse.
The psychology of it. Where does it come from? I wish we could all get that way about sex, but mostly we get to we judge. We judge about sex, which is why it's so hard for us to be free. We didn't get to the shame part of the pleasure thief. It's like shame keeps us from the shame around feeling that we're being judged is just debilitating and stops a lot of us from having the sex that we want. Worry that we're being judged. But I think then the more we, the antidote to that is being, clear about what we want and our desires and our arousal and pleasing a partner. And then it's like, and who cares? Like we always judge others. They're probably not doing what you think they are. The neighbors are probably having freakier sex than you think. Like everything, we just don't really know, or we assume everyone's having more sex than they are or less sex than they are. It also doesn't matter. Like the truth is, it doesn't matter. Like the more we focus on our sex lives, the better.
And shame isn't just a feeling, it's a state, and it's a physiological state at that. It's a freeze in our nervous system. And I mean, and there's so many variations of shame and where the origins of that, but do you have a general, because so many people come to, I know, and there's an element of shame that's in their body, in their being, and how do you even begin to navigate?
I mean, it is such a process. I mean, shame just shows up everywhere. It is a heady stew. But the first thing is recognizing where you came from. Like, oh, I'm feeling bad about sex. I'm feeling like I'm a bad person. And then recognizing, one thing is to recognize where that came from. What's the origin of that? And then you might realize that this voice in my head actually isn't mine. It was planted there by who knows, by religion or my parents or something I heard. And then once you can start to disconnect from that and then create your own sex positive messages, like knowing that you are someone who's deserving of pleasure and pleasure is your birthright, and rewriting your story and your connection to sex.
Yeah. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. I mean, returning agency to ourselves, which includes like how we get to feel about sex, as opposed to what we internalize and what was sort of implanted in ourselves from a parent or a culture or religion. Is just like,
surround ourselves. Exactly. I mean, that's like such a process, and I know people can do it. It's a journey, because it's like you were, let's say maybe for the first 18 years of your life, you were hearing this message, and maybe you find yourself 10 years later, right? You're almost 30 now, and you're like, oh, but why do I still think this? This is where the work has to happen. And so it's surrounding yourself with more sex positive voices, unfollowing people that make you feel bad on social media, practicing talking about sex, listening about sex. I think that's why a lot of people have found a lot of relief in my podcast, Sex with Emily, because people like used to email me, and I didn't get it at first when I was early on. They're like, my boyfriend and I just drove for 12 hours and listened to your podcast the whole time. And I was like, that's a lot of, I can do that. It's a lot. But I think it's because they're hearing it. It allows them to feel safer. Like, oh, it's okay to talk about sex. I feel safer now. This is how you do it. And so that could start to sort of decrease your shame and increase your, empowerment.
I haven't really talked about my personal sex life as much on my podcast, but like I was waiting to do it more with you, because I'm like, normalization does, and hearing people talk about it in a way where it's like an embodied liberation is within them and they're talking about it, I think is like, it's contagious. I hope it's contagious, Yeah,
I think
I mean, you're a testament to it.
Yeah, I think it is. And then you realize, like, I think the great thing that happens is it is contagious. And then you realize once you've had really like sex positive, affirming conversations, you can't go back.
You can't.
It's really hard to go back to, just being blind to it and repressing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we have some questions from our audience that I'm excited to get your expertise on.
I love it.
So the first question is, what's the best way to communicate my sexual desires and boundaries to my partner without causing discomfort or misunderstanding?
We covered that. I think we covered probably where I would go with that, but it takes patience. It's not a one-time conversation. Nope. The sex conversation is ongoing. So just starting with, I'd really love to make sure that we are both in a growth mindset around sex, that we want to grow together, learn together, that you would commit to opening up and like, let's just go on a journey together and figure out what we both love. Yeah. But I think we go back to the timing, tone, and turf, and all those things help.
Beautiful. Time, tone, and turf. Sing it, my friends. How can my partner and I reintegrate sexual activity into our relationship after significant life changes like a child or health issue? May I recommend an alien and an abductor role play?
Yes. Something totally different from the norm. No, well, first, I love this question because the truth is like, we're always going through life changes, but like a pregnancy is a really big one, a divorce, a death of a loved one, a disease, not disease, what do you say? That sounds right. Diagnosis,
like a health issue.
A health issue. These are all things that are going to kind of disrupt maybe our normal sexual functioning or sexual routines. But the challenge comes, why it's so hard for so many couples, is because if we don't already have that cadence of talking about sex in a healthy way, and then it gets disrupted because like a baby just came out of your body and now your whole life is changed. It's like, and then we haven't talked about it, and then it gets put on the back burner because we don't address it. This is when problems happen. But if you do have a challenge over any of these things, this is when you have to say, like, let's really talk about it. My body has changed. I'm still experiencing pain. I'm exhausted because the kids, the baby's crying and sleeping. But our sex life is still important to you, babe. And I'd love to find ways and different times that we could have sex. So like just like normalizing it, talking about it, and then like literally troubleshooting like everything else. If you couldn't go to your workout anymore because you had, different things to do, let's say you and your partner always worked out together every morning, but now you have a new job, let's say, or the baby. You'd say, when could we do it again? What would be a great time for us? Or maybe we can no longer, go running together, but would you be down with walking? And then, so it's like when you people get into this, they'll realize that it doesn't need all of these special places to go with it. Doesn't need certain, you would employ the same ways that you talk about other things in your life to sex.
Yeah.
But, I think with this, it's just like, first I want to normalize too that your sex is going to change each decade to decade with each thing. So just saying like, oh, we're in another one of those places where we get to reimagine our sex life right now with a newborn, with a new job, with this new medication I'm taking. And then you get to play together and like another opportunity to expand.
Yeah. I love that
and
framework.
Explore.
It's such a positive framework of being like, we're in a next incarnation of our evolving life together. Yeah. I love that. And that takes out some of like the fear and the shame and the concern that like, oh my gosh, we're in this phase. Well, you're constantly in a phase,
Life
right?
is a phase. Like I was in a phase like 3 hours ago. Now I'm in a new phase.
Exactly. All right. Could you explain the physiological impacts of having mismatched sexual libidos in a relationship and how to address it?
Yeah. I mean, well, first, that's the most common thing in the world. In every relationship, there's going to be a high desire partner and a low desire partner.
Yeah.
And they're going to come together and have a relationship, and there's going to be struggles and challenges. And so what's happening in those moments is, there's one person who it's mismatched libidos, desire discrepancy. They want it more often than the other one. Yeah. And so since that happens, you can already see there's an inherent problem there, challenge. Yeah. So then they get to talk about how many days feel right to you. And then, I mean, if you want to just get down to the days a week or times, but I actually don't love starting there, to be honest. It is important to say like, well, what does feel right to you? I want sex every day. You want sex once a week. So the easy place to start is like, okay, looks like we have to have sex 3.5 times a week for us both to feel great. And then you get to think about even further, like in my book, I talk about the pillars, the 5 pillars of sexual intelligence, of sex IQ. And like one of those is actually is knowing when you are aroused and turned on, like what needs to happen for you to be turned on?
Yeah.
When, like, if you decide that you want to have sex more often with your partner, what could they know about you to know that maybe it's when they give you a massage or when the house is clean or you're on vacation or in the evenings and not in the mornings. And once you start to really understand when you're most in the mood and when your partner's in the mood, that's another way to kind of figure out when you could have sex more frequently. But in these times, it's just an understanding of, that there's a desire discrepancy. It's going to be there and we're going to have to solve for it rather than making it the problem. Let's learn to manage it.
Yeah. I love that. So like getting to know your own sexual rhythms.
That's really important.
Yeah. And then also just like what helps you get into that state of readiness or desire. I mean, so that it's not just left up to luck.
Well, that's the thing. Most of the time, I don't know why I'm turned on. I don't know why I'm aroused. I don't know what happened, but we do. Like if you look back on the time, the last time you were aroused, or we're going to think about the last time you were turned on, what was happening to build up to that? Like what were those things? And so, was it time of day? Were you on certain medications or off a medication? Was it cold in the room, hot in the room? What were you wearing? How'd you feel in your body? And like, these are all such great things these are important things to uncover to understand your own desire and arousal runway.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It really says like we are not, like our whole life is not determined just from our hormones. Like there are other contributing factors that we have.
So many factors besides hormones. Yeah. Health.
Yeah.
Confidence, all the things.
The temperature of the room.
Yeah.
I love that. I actually really like that. I like it warm, just so you know, for the future. Okay. Last question. How do I address feelings of jealousy or insecurity arising from my partner's sexual history or experience?
That's a great question. I mean, with jealousy, we first have to look at ourselves too, because jealousy is usually telling us something about ourselves. Like, what is coming up for you when you hear about your partner's sexual history? Yeah. Are you feeling less than, that you're not good enough, that they have more experience than you do, that they know more than you do, and therefore you're going to be an inadequate lover? Like, look at all the stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves or to create these, this conflict with our partner when really, we get to first recognize. So that would be the first step. It's like, what's it saying about me? And I think it's so, we don't want to do that because jealousy can feel so ugly and awful and real too. Like the point, like, I'm really jealous and I need to go after this. But once we can understand like, oh, I'm actually not feeling, let's say, experienced enough. Well, then we get to, what a great opportunity to talk to our partner about it and to say, this brought up a lot for me. So when you talk about your past lovers, it makes, me feel like less than, that I don't have enough experience. And so I want you to know that I'm having these reactions. So maybe you don't want to hear them talk about their exes anymore.
Yeah.
Or maybe you want them to reassure you that, you know, they love the sex that you're having, or maybe there is something else they want you to do, but we don't know until we actually get underneath that jealousy and see what it's telling us truly.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And there's something you said about reassurance, is that like, there's this idea that like asking for reassurance means you're needy or messed up. And I want to differentiate like asking for reassurance. And if you can't receive it, that's where you got to go do your own work. But asking for it is actually fine, right?
I know. Yeah. And when I said that, I was like, oh, wait, I went there too. Cause like, oh, well, if I have to ask for it, it's not real. How do I know they're not lying to me? Yeah. You know, another way to do that though is to say like, I need to know that I'm a great, and if there's something else that's lacking, like what a great time to talk about what we could both do to make this really hot.
Yeah.
So maybe reassurance less than like more, what could we do together to make this the best sex we both ever had? What would that look like? What would that take?
Yeah.
Because I got to say, this whole thing about a lot of us this is very common actually, that people are like, my partner has had so many more lovers and I'll never be able to stand up to that. And it just, every time you're with somebody is a new opportunity to create a new sexual union. You're both bringing your own energies to the table. And I just think we should leave the past in the past and focus on what we have and what we can create together.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And Emily, Dr. Emily, thank you for being on The Gently Used Human, guiding us all into the pleasure renaissance that you are bringing us towards.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
I love being on your podcast. I love talking to you.
Where can people find you and get connected with you?
I'm all over. I'm Sex with Emily on all social media. My podcast is Sex with Emily. We release 2 a week. I have a Shop with Emily site on my website. It's all my favorite sex toys and products and things that make you feel good. But find it all at Sex with Emily.
Go find and hang out with Dr. Emily. She is the absolute best. Thank you all for listening to The Gently Used Human. Till next time. Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras, including submitting your questions for advice from a Midwestern mom. And don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And you know what? Show us some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.